I'm a coffee drinker, right? Admittedly, I know very little bit outside of coffee, right? I drink coffee and I know a good amount about coffee, but I don't know a lot when it comes to tea. My wife, on the other hand, Samantha, she's a tea drinker. She's an English tea drinker, and she's grown up drinking tea her whole life. And what she's taught me is there are several ways people can drink tea, right? You take your typical tea bag, and oftentimes you have people who are dippers. Maybe some of you are dippers. You can relate to this. And there are others who are steepers. And I'll illustrate what I mean. And I'll relate it to what I think Jesus is saying in our text today, right? There are some of us who will take the tea and we sort of dip in, right? And we just sort of dip the tea bag a little bit at a time. And it's almost like, if you think about it in our context as Christians, some of us, we sort of have this dipping relationship with God, right? We come to church on Sunday, we sort of dip in and then we dip out, right? We show up at Bible study or small group, we dip in and then we dip out, right? We volunteer, we serve, we give, we this part with God, but we sort of dip in and we dip out, right? You put on the screen and you're watching the sermon and you dip in for a little bit, but then you go on throughout the rest of your day and we think very little about God or Jesus or His Word or anything in our lives. We go to church on Sunday, we dip in, but then as soon as we leave, we go back to our normal lives. In my home growing up, I'm one of 6 kids. It was a pretty loud, chaotic, intense household, as you can imagine, with 6 children. So getting ready for church in the morning was a huge chore. And so there was a lot of screaming, a lot of fighting on the way to church, right? We're getting ready in the morning, we're screaming, we're yelling, we're fighting, we're angry. We walk into church, we dip in, and everyone's getting along with smiles. And then we dip out and we get in the car and everything is back to the way it was. Or we go to church on Sunday and then we're the same person on Monday, right? We live these sort of compartmentalized lives. We dip in and we dip out. And what Jesus is saying is don't dip in and dip out. Instead, I want you to remain. I want you to abide. I want you to steep and I want you to settle. And any real tea drinker will tell you that if you really want to drink tea, right, you don't just dip in and dip out. No. If you really want to let it soak in, you need to let it sit. Jesus is painting a picture for us today of sitting in Him and remaining in Him. Not living a compartmentalized life where we come in and come out, but a place where we just abide and where we remain. Right? He's inviting us into this unbroken connection with Him, this unhurried communion with Him, and this unending dependence on Him. And I want to look at each of those together. As we look at our text, I want to focus in on John chapter 15, verse 5. And we see each of those, this unbroken connection, this unhurried communion, and this unending dependence on Jesus. First, this unbroken connection with Him. Look at what Jesus says. He says, "For I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing." Jesus starts and He paints His picture as He is the vine and we are the branches. Now, again, this was a very popular metaphor in Jesus' day, right? In His area, in His time, in His place, His listeners understood what a vine and a branch looked like. We may need a refresher course. If you haven't seen an image of a grapevine and branch, this is what it looks like. Now, I needed a refresher on this, but the vine is actually it's not what you think it is. It's actually the trunk of the grapevine, of the tree. The trunk is what is referred to as the vine, and it grows vertically from the ground. The vine is connected to the soil, and all the nutrients and everything flow up through the sort of base and trunk of the grapevine. This is the vine. It's sort of the base and the trunk. And the branches are the things that sort of grow out from it. The leaves grow on the branches, and if it's a fruitful vine, then it'll also, the sap travels through it, and grapes will grow forth as well. And Jesus is making it clear, I am the true vine, my Father is the gardener, and you are the branches. And your job, your only job, my only job is to bear much fruit. But He's teaching us that the way we bear fruit is not in earning or achieving or in producing on our own. The way a grape bears fruit is just by being connected to the vine. And He's saying, I want you to remember, I am the vine, you are the branches. He's speaking of this unbroken connection, one to the other, right? The grapes can't grow. It can't bear fruit unless it's connected to the vine. And Jesus is saying, I am the true vine.